Hey friends, welcome to the Designing with PlantWave Masterclass. So I'm really excited to share this with you because not a lot of people have had the chance to go on a deep dive like this. And before we dive in, I just want to say, if PlantWave is designed to really just be plug and play. So if you want to just listen using our app and not get into maybe configuring it or designing, that's totally okay. You're going to get all the benefits of listening to plants just by using our app as it is. However, a lot of people ask me a lot of questions about this stuff, and it's something I've been developing over, I guess, 12 years at this point. I've done talks at big universities like Stanford on this kind of design practice, and I'm just looking to condense it into a way that is easily digestible. So it might at sometimes get a bit technical. I'm going to do my best to explain every aspect of this and also just to keep it fun. We're going to be able to dive in and have fun. So let's jump in. Let's check it out. Let's see what's going on. So the first thing we're going to talk about, we're going to talk about what sonification is. And so sonification is the practice that we're using to take the data from plants and make that into music. And then we're also going to go into like how PlantWave started, like why we're doing this. And then a little bit about how it works. We're going to dive into the data that we're able to get from plants. And then we're going to dive into more principles of design and then different design approaches, like ways that we can make different experiences from data from plants. And we're going to do that by playing in the app. So let's move forward. Let's check this out. So obviously you're going to want tools. You're going to want your PlantWave, and you're going to want your PlantWave Pro app. So you'll want those close by for the future modules. So first, what is sonification? Well, sonification is a way of taking non-audible data and representing it as sound. And so one of the most crude, like mechanical versions of sonification would be something like a wind chime, right? So when you hear a wind chime, you know the wind is blowing, and the wind might not be making any sound at that time. You might not hear the wind, but thanks to a wind chime, you can tell how windy it is. So if it's louder, then it's more windy, and if you're not hearing anything, it's probably not windy. And then another aspect to the wind chime is you can see at the top how it has the strings are oftentimes arranged so that the wind chime can kind of spin around, and that adds more musicality to the wind chime. Obviously everything is in a key, it's in one key, but because it spins around, if the wind is always coming from the west, you won't just get the same note over and over again. So it'll kind of the spinning part is a way of randomizing that wind data's translation into music. But if you wanted it to be a more literal translation of what's happening in the wind, you can make that top part fixed so that anytime the wind is blowing from a certain direction, it would produce the same note. So that is just a crude example of sonification, and we'll dive into more of what we're doing with plants. But first, this guy's really interesting. I love this dude. Tobias Jack. I like to see this as an example of sonification because what he does is he sings graphs. So this is a graph on global temperature change over the last 130 years. So he's going to sing this graph, and this is basically an example of sonification. So click on this and unmute it. Okay, good, great. Let's go. So there you go. Not necessarily the song that you want to hear, but definitely a version of sonification. Now, sonification is also used by NASA. Oh, let me get out of the way of this NASA logo. All right. So sonification is used by NASA to express, the wonders of the cosmos through sound. Believe it or not, yes, there are actually blind astrophysicists. I met one of them. I was on a panel with one at South by Southwest, Sarah Kane. And for astrophysicists and for blind astrophysicists, this is a way of them having a deeper relationship with the data from space. Now, contrary to what we might think of astrophysicists and scientists, they're not actually like staring at the night sky. They're not necessarily looking at the visual, looking at space in terms of like with their eyes. They're looking at data from space, and then they're using that data, they're representing it in different ways. And if you really want to have your mind blown, well, all those images you see of deep space, they are not photographs. They are visualizations of math, of numbers from space, created in a way that allows you and me as humans to have an understanding of what's going on out there. So, for instance, what we're looking at on this screen, this butterfly nebula, that is not what it looks like. The butterfly nebula image that we're looking at is a visualization of some of the stuff's like not even light, but it's a visualization of this so that we can have an understanding. Oh, okay, those are stars. That's gas. That's this and that's that. But it was really wild to learn that. I didn't actually know that, but this visualization is really no different from the sonification that we're about to listen to. So this butterfly nebula doesn't look like this, and it doesn't sound like what we're about to listen to, but we can use sound to understand what we're looking at, or to get an idea of what is happening in this frame with our eyes closed. So I'm going to hit play on this and let's check it out. Okay, so first you'll notice there are these like little kind of twinkly sounds, these little beeps, little synth sounds. Those are representing the different celestial bodies out there, the different stars and things. You'll notice that when this line, as it's moving from left to right, as it goes over those, the ones that are higher on the x-axis will produce higher notes, and the ones that are brighter will be louder than the other ones, and then the ones that are lower will be lower notes, and dimmer will be less loud. So those little points are that's controlling those sounds. And then you'll notice like there's it's almost like a violin sound, and that violin sound is representing the gas. So this gaseous area, this like blue, purple, kind of green zone there in the middle. And you'll notice that it gets louder as it's brighter. And then it also gets, the notes go higher as the gaseous part goes into the higher levels of the image. So what you end up having is that as this line moves from left to right, you'll notice that the notes of the strings kind of go higher and higher and higher, and you'll hear these little points of the stars. So let's continue listening. Check this out. So there you have it. Sonification of the butterfly nebula. Just another way that we can use sonification to translate non-audible data into sound, and how that can serve us as humans in different ways, especially for those who don't have the level of sight that many of us have. So with that, I bet you're wondering how PlantWave started and why I'm doing this. Well, so I had been in bands and stuff in the 90s and early 2000s. I'd been making music for forever. And I eventually just got bored with it. I wanted to feel like I was having a deeper collaboration with something other than human beings. And so I started to go out into nature and make field recordings and connect to the feeling of different natural spaces, and making recordings and then going back into my studio and connecting to the feeling of those places. This was my like little makeshift studio back in the day in Philadelphia. And then I would make music by channeling the feeling of those spaces. And then I found that, I would always like feel really connected to a space, and that it was almost like nature was speaking through me as I made music. So I started a record label to release this music, and it's called Data Garden. And it's still my company now. It's still the company that makes PlantWave. But yeah, we actually released all of our albums on these little cards that had seeds embedded and had a download code on the back, and you could actually just plant it and it would grow into flowers. So we were like replacing record shelves with plant shelves, and it was a lot of fun. It was just a deep exploration for me, and through that, I was always exploring this connection between like plants, music, and technology and interactive art, and really inspired by people like Brian Eno. And so this was our early website that looked like a synthesizer. And I was just really interested in generative art and music, and bridging plants and music, and bridging plants and technology. So we did this in a lot of different ways. And one was we started to produce all of these these music and arts festivals outdoors in public spaces to bring awareness to different public parks and historical sites in Philadelphia. So this was one, it's called the Switched On Garden, where we had 56 acres of land. We had all these different interactive art pieces by amazing artists. And you can see we had some folks making sound with trees and things like that. And we had a big concert, and this led us to starting to be invited to produce more events and make more art. So we were invited to the Philadelphia Museum of Art to make to do something, and we weren't really sure what we were going to do, but we had this interest. We had this idea, this data garden, this way of connecting to these different ideas of connecting to plants and music and technology. And we started to, go back to those roots and go back to some of the things that we learned about over the time we were doing research of like other people that were doing experiments like in the 70s with biofeedback and plants. This was from The Secret Life of Plants, if you've ever seen that film. And so we worked with our friend Sam, and we built this. We started to connect lie detectors to plants and get readings from plants based on their changes in conductivity as they're moving water through their systems. So my friend Sam, super genius, he used to like build musical instruments out of like Barbie karaoke machines and weird toys and just all these. He used to just make crazy stuff. So we worked with him, and he was like, oh yeah, I have all these old lie detector circuits. That's what was used in some of the Secret Life of Plants experiments and some other experiments. So why don't we just use that and hook that up to a plant? And so here we are back in 2011, 2012, hooking this up. And it was really cool. We were able to get all this data from the plants. This is from our first installation at the Philadelphia Museum of Art. We have these 4 different plants. 4 different channels of plant data coming through there. And yeah, so we went out to the Philadelphia Museum of Art, and it was really successful. We had like thousands of people coming through, and notice a lot of people did this thing with their hands, like this like exchange thing they would do between their hands and plants to just like listen to how the music would change as they're kind of not even touching it, but just hovering over it. And I just thought this was really beautiful. I had no idea this was going to become a thing. It was just a way of creating music for me that didn't involve being in a band. So this is me creating music or just listening to the system I created. And so that was super enjoyable. And yeah, it ended up being really successful. It was, packed, and more people, more and more artists wanted this technology to make music and art from plants. So we started to experiment in 2014. Started experimenting with like actually making a product, which I had no plan of ever doing, but this was super exciting to just see how much demand there was for it. And so I was just like, I just want to make sure that people can have this experience. So this is an early prototype, just in a little plastic box there, as we're figuring out how to do this. And the original product, the first product, was called MIDI Sprout. You may have seen some of these out in the world and like TikTok and Instagram and other stuff. They were designed for synthesizers. They were designed for other artists to be able to hook that up to a synthesizer and make music kind of the way that we were making it. And but not everybody has a synthesizer, obviously. But it was really developed for artists and musicians. And over time, more and more people wanted to just have something they could take home and not have to learn how to use a synthesizer or any of these other things. And so that's when we started building out our app and building out a sound engine that kind of has all this crazy technology built into it, designed by us. So that's when we started working on PlantWave in 2019. We did a Kickstarter, and we were supported by a bunch of people to be able to bring this to life. And now there are, 13,000 people that have PlantWaves out there in the world, and they're using it like this. They're meditating with their plants. They're listening at home in the garden on the trail. And they're listening in all these different amazing ways. And we have all these sound sets that we developed that have different use cases. They're made for different kinds of experiences. So it's really awesome to have this out in the world. And what's even cooler is that we were able to open up the software that we built and release that as the pro version, which you now have access to, which allows you to make your own sound sets, not just so you can move beyond just using these presets and make your own. So that is the story of Sonification, and that's the story of PlantWave. And so in the next module, we're going to dive more into how PlantWave works and some of the fundamental principles behind how we're designing for plants. Let's go.